Hey everyone, welcome to Pastor Play. So today we have Swarm currently streaming on Amazon Prime Video now. So this limited series comes from co-creators Donald Glover and Janine Neighbors from Atlanta. And Janine Neighbors stated that this is a limited series because it has a beginning, middle, and end. Now, could they do something like what they're doing with the White Lotus, where they have like a different season or different iteration each season or each, I guess, version of the show and keep continuing with different characters? That would be interesting if they did do that. I guess depending on the success of this, they may end up doing something like that. But she stated that it's a limited series. But either way, this series is about a young woman obsessed with a pop star and unable to really fit in anywhere between the years of 2016 and 2018. Now, it is labeled as a drama and comedy with horror elements, but a lot of people are viewing it as a story about toxic fandom and the lengths that people will go through to defend their celebrity idols and how they view them as gods among men and women, or they take their fandom of said celebrities too far and you end up going past the line that you really can't come back from. And I think contextually, yes, that's what this series is about. But what I found interesting about it overall is that this is also a series about an African American woman serial killer, because at a certain point, that's what she becomes. And I've never seen any show or movie that has done a depiction of an African American woman serial killer. There may be something with like a man out there, but I can't think of anything that's out there where it's shown kind of an African American woman in this light. You do have kind of Diary of a Mad Black Woman by Tyler Perry to an extent, but it's not doing, it never did this. I mean, it's not that, it's not that gruesome and violent and kind of wild and bloody as this limited series is. There are 7 episodes. They're about 30 minutes each, and it's a very quick watch. I I started watching it probably like Thursday night, and I'm like, I gotta go to work tomorrow. And I just couldn't stop. I was like, each episode, I was like, oh my God, what's gonna happen next? What's gonna happen next? And it's very bingeable. And if you're not watching the clock, it'll go by just like that. But if it's 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, you'd be like, I got to get up and go to work tomorrow. And I will say, as crazy as I think this story is to an extent, there is also a self awareness that the show depicts as far as the comparisons to Beyonce, her siblings, Jay-Z, the twins, the kids, the situation of Beyonce, Jay-Z, and Solange on the elevator, the Beehive. It's a lot of different comparisons that it has of Beyonce, and having the tickets be so high, people not paying their rent. They're saying either I'm gonna go to this concert or I'm gonna pay my rent. And people say I'm not gonna go, I'm not gonna pay my rent, but I'm gonna go to that concert. Or maybe you spend all your tax money on the tickets, whatever. I don't know. It's your life. You do what you want to do. But and also too, they have this talk show host named Helen instead of Ellen. So I mean, it's there's a lot of meta awareness that's also in this show, which I think is kind of funny. But I will say that the main star, which is Dominique Fishback, she I think she does a great job. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Lupita Nyong'o's performance, a little bit in Jordan Peele's Us, certain subtleties with how Lupita played those two characters. So I think, I don't know, as this year progresses with more shows and more limited series, I don't know how it'll stack up with the future upcoming, limited series and shows and whatnot. But I think she could get an Emmy nomination, and if not, maybe like an NAACP award nomination or something. I hope her career benefits from this performance because I think she does a really great job with what she's given. So we end up following Dominique Fishback, who is an obsessed fan of the world's biggest pop star, Naja. Not only is she a very intense fan, but she's also someone who has been dealt a rather bad hand in life. She does have, you can tell she has some kind of mental issues that she needs help with. And at one point, when they kind of go back in her history as a child, you find out that she was part of the foster care system. She had got put with a family, but because of her violent behavior, she ends up stabbing a girl at a pajama sleepover party, and she's like, I spilt the white milk, which is this Caucasian girl who she ends up stabbing. But the foster care family, or the adoptive family, they put her in therapy that the state ends up paying for, but in the end it doesn't seem to do any good, and she ends up getting what they call it's called a foster family or foster care reversal. And as it is too common and often the case, she doesn't ultimately get the help that she needs. And I will say, one of the problems to me with the series overall is that they don't really dig enough into her past. I guess they were trying to give a little bit of backstory to maybe explain why she may have become so violent to an extent, but they kind of give you bits of pieces of information here, but it doesn't, to me, it doesn't fully give enough character development in that sense. I mean, at the end of the day, once you start killing people and taking people's lives, you're still held accountable, whether you have mental issues, whether you have, a sad story, or whatever the reasons may be. You're still taking people's lives. Your actions are coming at the expense of other people's lives. So either way, she's still held accountable, either way, no matter who it is. And I will say, in this story, like in the Jeffrey Dahmer story, the cops are not, they're not really figuring it out. But one cop does end up figuring it out. And she herself is also an African American woman too. But, getting back to the character Dre, as she doesn't end up getting any help, this kind of results in her setting off on an unexpected murder spree cross country throughout the United States. At first, she sets out to kill certain individuals, but if someone gets in her way, they could easily get thrown into the next victim. Either you're part of the solution or you're part of the problem, basically. If you're in her way, or she needs money, or she needs a car or a ride, and you don't give her what she wants, she will dispose of you. That's literally basically it. And Dre only really had one thing, aside from the pop star Naja holding her up in life. It was her sister Marissa, that's played by Chloe Bailey. So when Chloe Bailey ends up dying, Dre ends up losing everything that kind of, I would say, that held her, or kept her, I guess, as sane as possible, to keep her kind of living a normal life. And when this death happens, I think she kind of, again, she feels like she's lost the one person who's truly understood her other than the music of Naija. And at the end, I mean, kind of summer, like looking out of it from a zoomed out perspective, she was, I mean, you could tell even from a child, it's like she was just trying to be accepted. She was just trying to find somewhere that she belonged, where she felt loved and understood, which I think everybody looks for. I think when you talk about people who are adopted or part of the foster care system, that kind of need is more, I don't even know what the word is. It's kind of more deepened. It's maybe more like shallow, and it's a hole that's probably so deep that it needs to be filled up. And some people, they do find good families, and they do find good people who love them and treat them with love and respect, and they go off and become great people. But there's also a lot of people who end up falling through the cracks. They come across bad families or creeps and criminals and all types of unscrupulous types of people that just kind of make those years or their existence a living hell. And though it seems that Dre did come across a good family, whatever the specific traumas is that that have happened to her that got her to the point of where she becomes this kind of violent serial killer for whatever her motives may be. The series doesn't really, again, it doesn't really dive into it that much. You're kind of pulling in different pieces here and there. um I will say that I think that there's parallels to Naja and, again, Beyonce and the Beehive. But I will say, as far as in this show, the character Naja represents a sense of purpose, a sense of acceptance and community. Also, with the swarm, the community of all the fans of the artist, you can hide behind your screen names. She feels represented. Also, too, they come from the same neighborhood, the same city. They're both African American women. They have relationships with their sisters. There's a parallel in a lot of ways between the two characters. I think she kind of sees herself in Naja, or sees that as some other kind of version of herself, or maybe what she wishes she could be. And Naja's this popular artist. Marissa's was very popular in school and different things like that. So the fact that she identifies with Naja so much and looks up to her as this kind of godlike figure gives Dre meaning and a sense of understanding, I guess, in her own life. But it also, too, it probably makes her feel not so alone in the world. And I think, too, Naja represents somebody who talks and expresses herself in a way that Dre feels heard and seen and represented. And, and then meeting Marissa as a kid, or, when they're like younger, because her family ends up adopting or taking Dre in. So Marissa and Dre, they find that commonality as they both love Naja, and Marissa loves her as much as Dre does. It just kind of solidifies their relationship. It builds a solidarity of sisterhood. And Marissa, defends and stands up for Dre. And she sees Dre and she understands Dre to a certain extent, not necessarily everything. And again, the swarm, it offers community and acceptance online virtually that she has never really gotten in the real world, except for really Marissa and people that she's encountered. And I think when Marissa ends up dying because her boyfriend Khalid, paid by Damson Idris, cheats on her, and Dre is at this club or party or festival and whatnot, and she's getting high and end up having a one night stand with some random guy. She ends up sleeping over, and she ends up missing the text or the calls from Marissa, and this is end up when Marissa ends up taking her own life. Again, everything that she felt that connected her to the world kind of gets lost, and she kind of spirals into, I would say, this kind of, I would say, a little bit of like Kill Bill, where she kind of makes a list of the people that she feels is responsible for Marissa's death, or wanting to get retaliation for the people that she feel that's responsible for Marissa's death. And that's kind of when she just kind of loses it, and she ends up getting some kind of, I would say she gets some kind of satisfaction out of taking people's life. Maybe it makes her, it makes her feel alive, or it makes her feel like she's doing something purposefully. And there's also the thing of like her being a lesbian and having these kind of unrequited feelings towards Marissa, or even towards women in general, that's kind of repressed to an extent in the beginning of the series, that kind of gets more broadened later on in the series. And also too, there's this thing where when they were younger, there's a video of them leaving a Naja concert where basically Chloe Bailey as Marissa's like, we have to protect Naja's name at all costs, and we have to defend her name no matter what. And initially, the killing spree kind of starts off as revenge or retaliation for the death of Marissa, going after her, going after the cheating ex-boyfriend, going after someone who posted on Instagram that Marissa, killed herself, basically kind of just saying unsavory things towards Marissa's name. Those are kind of like the first two deaths. But then after that, it becomes this Kill Bill list of anyone who's saying anything negative or mean or hostile towards Naja, and her getting retaliation and defending Naja's name, and then kind of going on this journey to reach Naja and speak to her herself, to to get to be able to look at her, to touch her, to speak to her, and whatnot. Um, and I do think that they show that Dre has a lot of love inside of her, but there's also a lot of grief. And she didn't necessarily have any help, even though I don't know if she really even tried to get help. She doesn't necessarily try to get help to try to process it and deal with it in a healthy way. She just kind of loses it and just kind of spirals into this kind of dissociativeness kind of behavior, where when she does start to kill people, she hears like the buzzings, like a buzzing sound of like a beehive swarm. And then she just kind of, takes her vengeance out on whoever the person is. And she's like naturally good at it. She knows how to clean up the place, clean up the blood, and well, to an extent, she doesn't clean up all the scenes, but she basically, tries to wipe down the scenes and, keep herself from getting caught, you know. And, when we end up getting to, I would say, episode 4, I will say that I think it would have been interesting if the group of women were all black, because if they if they found what was in Dre's car, she most likely would have been gone. She would have been kicked out of that group. They would have been like, "You got to go home. You don't have to go home, but you got to get up out of here." But not the women specifically that she ends up coming across in episode 4. They use the information or what's in the car as leverage and manipulation. And when Dre comes across this group, Deca Win, it's a women's empowerment group aimed at unlocking female potential by teaching, learning, training, and most of all, healing. Eva, the leader, who turns out to be kind of basically a cult, where the women of Deca Win have been branded with symbols of spirituality, oh my God, spirituality and fulfillment that indicate their internal commitment to the group. They are bound to each other with their secrets because they know everything about one another. Through these therapy sessions that quickly turn into hypnosis exercises by Ava. Now, this enables Dre to spill her dark secrets about her past and true love of murder that she had never admitted to anyone before. And during these therapy sessions, she ends up talking about her grandma, and they talk about the spilt milk, but then the color of the milk was red or white. Some of that didn't make sense. So there's some parts too where the writing is off a little bit too. So we do find out. So maybe at one point before she had went into the foster care system, she was living with her grandma. Maybe she hurt her grandma, and that's how or something like that. Like, I mean, that's probably the only part where they talk about what trauma she may have suffered, or or was she part of the trauma? Was she kind of always violent, even before being put in the foster care system and living with other families? Like, there's just certain things that that they kind of give a little bit. They get a little bit into, but they don't. To me, they don't give you enough information to give you enough insight into it. But either way, Ava and these other members, they use the information in Dre's phone as collateral to use against her if she doesn't basically follow their rules. And I will say too, the phone, when Marissa dies, Dre ends up finding Marissa's phone, and she ends up calling the phone to hear her voice. She ends up texting Marissa's phone and then texting herself back on Marissa's phone, back to her phone number, to, I guess, to still feel like she's connected to her, that that she has someone who gets her, who understands her. Looking at Marissa's videos, because Marissa wanted to be basically a celebrity makeup artist. She was working to basically get to that point where she would be doing makeup for people on tour and different shows and different things like that. That was kind of her goal in life. And so she had these makeup tutorial videos and different things on her phone. So by having Marissa's phone with her, it made her still feel connected to Marissa. And so, so having Marissa's phone taken away was like, it was like kind of like basically a no. And at this point, once you kind of realize that this is some kind of like cult, which unlike most people may not realize that right away, but Dre, she discovers that, what was being done to her is stopping her from going to Naja's tour, which is also a parallel to Beyonce at Beychella, but this is Naja headlining at Bonnaroo. What Ava doesn't realize is that Dre's commitment to Deca Win or to that empowerment group is never going to be as strong to her questionable devotion to Naja. And she ends up doing what she has to do to basically get to Naja. Choices were made and actions were done. And I think I would say up until five, maybe yeah, episode 4 or 5, it's really good, and then it kind of goes off. I say by 6 and 7, it goes a certain way. I think that it's trying to do multiple things. Some things I think it pulls off better than other things. Ultimately, I think that they probably could have dug a little bit more deeper into how the fandom is toxic. There was one point where Beyonce, I think she had cut her ear or something like that, and a lot of fans were like cutting their ears because Beyonce cut her ear, like going into that kind of fandom or fan worship, like examining what the psychological aspects of that is. They did do this. They have one episode where a fan is like, well, I wouldn't go that far, and then they're like, well, I wouldn't. Yeah, no, I wouldn't. But the person, the character, this fan of Naja, kept kind of like second guessing, but kind of thinking about it. Like you can literally see their brain kind of like, no, I wouldn't do that. Would I do that? Would I go that far for a celebrity, or for my for this artist that I love? And it touches on it to an extent, but I feel like it probably could have dug deeper into that kind of whole thought process either way. And then when we get to episode 7, it does start on a happier and more positive note, where you think maybe Dre has a chance of actually being happy and maybe finding someone that loves her and that she can love. Um, with the character Rashida, that's played by Kiersey Clemens, and I don't want to ruin the last episode, but it takes an interesting turn again. Yeah, it takes an interesting turn again, and by the end of 7, it kind of gives you this open ending kind of thing, where it's like it's you view it how you want to view it. Um, and I think it's kind of subjective. Is this a happy ending for Dre or not? She is happy in that moment, but it's most likely going to be fleeting. Is it even real? When she goes into these moments of or disassociating from, I would say, maybe her conscious mind, and going into like the bloodlust serial killer impulses, there's like a disconnect. Even though immediately she wants to eat food and junk food and eat, it's like it's a whole strange thing. But kind of very similar to what Jeffrey Dahmer was doing. Ironically, um, and so I really think they kind of leave episode 7's ending as open to interpretation for whatever you think it means. I do think it was an interesting way to end it. Like, what happens to her? Does she go to jail? Is she still on the run? Like, I'm not really sure. Um, and then at some point too, they put Chloe or Marissa's face on Naja's face. Maybe because to Dre, they're one and the same. The two women were kind of the two people that she loved the most, and that she felt understood her. It kind of begins with Marissa and it ends with Naja. So, I mean, I think it depends on kind of how you view it overall. I do think overall that this is still a good series. My recommendation is to play. Of course, too, if you have Amazon Prime Video and you already paying for it, I mean, watch it anyway. The first episode really starts really great, and I remember but when they opened with showing Chloe Bailey, I was like, wow. I remember the videos when she was like younger, singing Beyonce covers, and I was thinking like, grownness. Watch out, world. I'm grown now. I'm grown. Because that first scene when she's introduced, I was like, wow, this is a very interesting way to introduce her character. Okay, who am I to judge? But all right. I'm like, this is a very, like, quick getting the back blown out. But either anyway, if you like this review, hit the like button, check it out. It is a play. I do recommend to watch this. Again, if you like the video, this review, hit the like button. Please subscribe. Other than that, see you next time. Bye. Check out some of my other videos.